You're listening to the Building Stronger Agents podcast, where we interview the top solo agents, team leaders, and brokers across the country to see what makes them thrive in today's market and beyond. Thanks for joining us for the latest episode of the Building Stronger Agents podcast. This is Will Penny, and I am excited to have Dominic Fonte on our show today. Dominic is a realtor who's been in the business for how many years, Dominic?
It'll be 35 years, February 11th.
35 years. So when he got in the business, they didn't even have fax machines. Anyway, Dominic, without further ado, give us an introduction, man. Tell us how you got in the business and how you're here today.
Yeah, so basically what happened to me is I started, when I was in high school, I was in the co-op program, work half a day, go to school half a day. I don't think they really thought I was college bound, which of course I was not. And so I was working a regular retail job. I started in the grocery business. This would be in the early 70s. And in the back of my mind, I knew that minimum wage, fighting for a nickel or dime raise would never really satisfy me in the long run. I had stronger aspirations, but I didn't really have a skill set or the education to feel like I could earn much more than minimum wage. Well, guess what? Most of the people I ran into that had success, or at least my perception, had real estate in their portfolio. And when you make minimum wage, it's hard to envision that for yourself, right? So for me personally, in the back of my mind, real estate was always there. I just didn't have the confidence to dive into it, right? So that's basically was my mindset. Then during the late 70s, I was probably my 25 years old at the time. I was trying to figure this out, right? So I went to do some cram courses. I did go to school. I flunked the test the first time, unfortunately, but I was just going to dip my toe into it. So I had another job at the gift shop, right? Just kind of didn't really have a great experience with them. And I knew the writing was on the wall that I have to come up with a plan. And at this time, my desires were getting stronger. I needed a few more things. It just needed more than minimum wage. So real estate kept coming to the forefront. So when I did do these cram courses, I thought I would go ahead, dip my toe into it, ease into it slowly, and build my confidence up because I was really insecure about everything at that time. And so, I had a big run-in with the boss. He was a jerk. And so he wrote me up and I just said, you know what, screw you. And so I was licensed, but I didn't have any experience, right? So back in the 80s, this would have been early 89 or 88, I'm sorry. So 1988. So I left him on Friday without notice, and it wasn't a very pleasant exit, right? So I started real estate on Monday, no sales, no experience. All I had was just fear and a lot of it. And so I show up at the real estate office Monday morning at 8:30 in the morning, and no one's in the office. As you can imagine, agents don't really come in that early typically. And so I see three secretaries and they say, "Hey, Dom, you're going to be late for work. What are you doing here? You should be at work." And I said, "I got great news. I quit my job. I'm going to be a full-time realtor." And they looked at me and they said, "You what? Like, you idiot." And so right at that time, I was looking for a bucket because I wanted to throw up. I just was so miserable because when I left, I didn't have like a college degree. I didn't have any special skills. I left sort of on a negative note. I didn't really give him notice because he was such a pill. I just said, screw him and I'm out, right? But I didn't understand the gravity of the situation because I didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't even have a suit jacket at the time. So the first day I'm sitting in my office cubicle, just trembling, thinking, holy shit, what did I just do? Excuse me, I didn't mean to say that. So the broker comes in and said, "Hey, I heard the good news. You're going to be awesome." He goes, "You could just do whatever you want. We're going to be great, blah, blah, blah." So I'm like, okay, great. So she says, "Well, what have you been doing while you've been sitting here the last few hours?" And I said, "Well, just thinking about what I'm going to do, study the roots." So she says, "Open up that drawer and grab that phone book out of there." And she says, "Open it up to the A's and start making some calls." I said, "Well, what am I supposed to say? I don't know anything." She goes, "Just say, hi, I'm a real estate agent. I'm new in the business and I'm wondering if you're thinking of buying or selling." And so you can only imagine how that went. So that's what I did the first month. And after an hour or so of this, it was very discouraging. I would get the answering machine and that was great, but I never was able to talk to anybody. So probably around 11:30, 12, agents started rolling in. And I remember I was talking on the phone trying to get people to communicate with me. And I kept talking softer and softer and softer because it was so humiliating. So then I went home and got into my basement, got on the phone, did the same thing, but I got humiliated by myself. So I could live with that. So after about a month of doing this, I could see things were not going the way it needed to go. And so then I thought, okay, I'll go get some of those bags, those cheap plastic bags, fill them with free stuff from the office, go buy some magnets and start knocking on doors. So I grew up in the Southwest end, kind of a poor end of town. And so I started there and I knocked on every door except for in the deep snow around the week, 9 to 5, until I got up to Lake Cable. So it's in Jackson Township. It's a small lake. And I remember I was going around the lake. Okay, I'm going to touch every house that touches water. I'm going to knock on the door. And so I remember this one day, you know, I'm just thinking to myself, what am I doing? This is so miserable. And I'm not having any success. And my bank account had $3,000 left in it. And I knew if I didn't get some results, I'm going to lose everything. And I knew I wasn't going to be able to get my old job back because I kind of blew it the way I left. So I'm knocking on doors, you know, 9 to 5. And as you can only imagine, it was a miserable experience. So here's where it changed for me. So I know I had 3 doors left to hit and at Lake Cable. I remember there was a ranch. Instead of ranches being horizontal, it was kind of turned like this. And it was touching the water on this side, right? And it wasn't really a really attractive house, but it had some pretty rose bushes. So I thought I'll just mention something about the rose bushes because, like, I'm tired. I want to go home. I'm hungry. I'm miserable. I have holes in my shoes because I was shuffling my feet because I just didn't want to do it anymore. And so the guy comes out to the porch. He goes, "May I help you, sir?" And I said, "Yes, my name's Dominic Fonte. I'm a new real estate agent going door to door to meet all the neighbors. I got this valuable bag of information I'd like to give you. I also have a magnet. I was wondering if you could put the magnet on a refrigerator. And if you have a real estate question or you know someone that has a real estate need, could you call me?" And so he takes my magnet. He says, "Dominic Fonte." And the way he said it, I thought he was going to say, "You know what? I think I went to school with your dad." Or, "Hey, I've been seeing you around the neighborhood." No, here's what he says. "Dominic Fonte, get lost," flung it out in the yard. And so it was like, I didn't see that coming. So I had 2 more houses to hit on that street, but I went home immediately because I was so deflated, so depressed, so miserable. And I went home and I remember my wife said, "Hey, how'd it go today? You sell any houses?" And she didn't quite understand. It doesn't work quite like that. So the very next day, I'm trying to get out of bed and I was so depressed, I could barely get out of bed. Matter of fact, I didn't want to get out of bed. So then after about an extra hour of laying there, like sulking in my misery, I said, "You know what? I got to suck it up and I just got to go pick up where I left off." So I went back to that street and had a really bad feeling when I saw that house again, knocked on those last 2 house doors. It was 9 in the morning. No one answered, hung the crap on the door, went around the corner. And sure enough, who do I see but a mailman? I see the mailman emptying out like a little mailbox in the neighborhood. And I had an epiphany. I said, "You know what? Like, if he knows the route, he might know the gossip or he might know what's going on in the neighborhood." So I went over to him and I was broken by this time, trust me. And I said, "Sir," and he was startled. He was unloading the mailbox. And I said, could I ask you a favor?" And he was, "Sure. What can I do for you, son?" I said, "Have you been doing this route very long?" He goes, "Oh yeah, 27 years. I said, "I know this is going to be a weird question, but I said, I'm a new real estate agent. I'm going door to door. And this guy threw my stuff out in the yard. And I just said, I'm just having a miserable time." I said, "Is there any way you would know if someone's thinking of buying or selling in the neighborhood?" He goes, "Well, I really can't say that, but if you keep it to yourself." 3 doors down, she just went through a divorce. And a couple doors down from that, you know, she lost her husband. Yes, they'll probably be selling. And so that's how it all started for me, honestly.
Wow.
That's
And so
crazy.
the first year, my first full year of selling, I sold 40 homes.
How many homes?
40.
Fantastic.
So I made 15,000 in my job. And my wish was, could I only make 14 or 15,000 my first year? Could I do that? And I made 40 the first year. So they were smaller price ranges, like 35, 25, 35 price range. So I knew after that first year, you know, I didn't have any helpers. So it was me doing all the pieces, parts, and we just were getting a fax machine. So that was our newest technology and everything. We had the MLS books were just coming out. We had the file card system and all that. So we didn't have technology like we do now. And we didn't have programs like this to help other agents, you know, figure it out quicker. So I really went through some serious abuse, but what drove me more than anything was the fear of failure. So it forced me to do the uncomfortable. And that's really how I became very successful. Is I took some serious abuse early on, I can tell you, but I learned my skill very well.
That's awesome, man. By the way, Mark Young is our co-host. I was so excited to introduce Dominic that I did not introduce Mark Young, who's our co-host on our show this week. So with everything you've gone through, I think you just kind of address it, but is there one thing that you would tell new agents that contributed to you being in the business for 35 years?
Well, I mean, I think the big thing I would probably say is, what is your compelling reason? Like, why do you want to do this? What is your reason why? So I find a lot of times brokers sometimes will just hire people that just want like a body, hoping that they'll turn into something. And the statistics, 87% of the people fail within 3 to 5 years because not necessarily training, because they don't have the grit, they don't have the determination, they don't have the passion, they don't really know why. I mean, there's perception versus reality. So in real estate, you see HGTV and it kind of sets an unusual standard that people get excited about. They like to see real estate, they like to stage real estate, they like to go to open houses, but they really don't know why. So you got to have a compelling reason why. So my suggestion to a newer agent or someone that's, I would say in the last 6 years, 7 years, because we're starting to see a slight adjustment now. And so if you've only been in the business since 15 or more current, you've only seen a market like this, right? And then 20 and 21, and now back to 22. So now we're seeing pre-pandemic numbers. But if you don't know your numbers and you don't understand that, then you're going to be thinking, the sky's falling, and then you get anxiety, and then you get negative, and what you think about expands. So you want to stay focused on positivity, optimism, and determination. So I would say if you're getting into the business, it would be wise to have a compelling reason. Why do you want to do this? Now, I find a lot of times, engineers and other people that are detail people, they're tired of their job, they lose their job, they're downsized out, whatever the case may be. And real estate's a sexy kind of a perception, right? Like, who wouldn't want to be an entrepreneur? Who wouldn't want to have their own schedule? Who wouldn't want to have unlimited income potential? So that's the perception of it. And there's a few people, 1 or 2 or 3% that fall into that category. But the bottom line is if you don't have a compelling reason why you want to do this, like for me personally, I like people. I enjoy people. I have a sincere empathy and respect for elderly people. And so I really want to do what's in their best interest. So like as a real estate agent, you typically think, okay, I got to find a buyer, I got to find a seller, I got to find a buyer, I got to find a seller. Well, many times they don't really know the buyer or seller. They just know something has to change. And so they look to the professional. And so the professional saying, I need a sale or something. So you always have to look at the client's best interest. And if you have a passion for people like that, you can learn the skill set very quickly. So the process is here. So from finding a buyer to getting to the closing table, or a seller to the closing table, is about this far, right? So the services and the systems I learned over time, I shortened it up to here. Because like when you take the most expensive thing that most people do, and then you infuse it with a bunch of emotions, and guess what? It's not always, hey, we're expanding our family, we're expanding, we're going to build a home, we're all happy, yeah. It's like, I got cancer, I lost my job, my mom went into a nursing home. There's all kinds of things that are not joyous, right? So I think as an agent, you are that knowledge broker service provider to do what's in their best interest. And I'll give you a quick example of what I'm talking about. There was a customer I had that bugged me a lot, right? And she felt she was bugging me a lot, which she really wasn't, and she was a nice person. So randomly I'd show them a house, randomly we'd, email this or that. And this happened over the course of 10 years. And she finally said, you know what? I mean, I don't know how you're so nice and you're just so sincere, blah, blah, blah. I said, it's not a problem. I said, I do this for people all day long. It only takes a second. So she appreciated that. Well, from her alone, I sold 10 homes.
Oh, wow.
In the course of several years, she referred me to 10 people. She didn't use me for 10 years, but I had 10 customers, millions of dollars worth of volume because of that. And then at the end of the day, within 10 years, she bought a $500,000 house and sold a $400,000 house. So it's just the word of mouth is important. So the sphere isn't always the buyer or the seller. It's what's in their best interest. So when you make sure you put their needs first, it will just multiply many folds for you as an agent. But you got to be patient. You got to look at the long game. That's my advice.
Very good.
Hey, Dom, that was awesome. I have a question. You kind of alluded to this as far as the different markets that we're in, and the career that you've had so far. You've seen a couple of ups and downs. what would you say that one thing that you're doing right now during this shift that we have going on?
Okay, this is a baby shift, honestly, compared to what I've seen over the course of time. This is the seventh shift that I've seen, not to mention when the rates were high in the 80s, right? So I didn't get into real estate till 87, 88, but in 81, the rates were 18%, which was a good rate at the time. And then you had, the Gulf War, you had 9/11, then you had 2008, which was about a 5-year run where it was totally miserable. So say 8 to 13 is 5 years, let's say. And then it started improving, right? And then there was just a few little hiccups, like COVID was a hiccup, and it turned out to be a ridiculous year where the appreciation was 20%. Now we're adjusting, where our appreciation is about 15%, which is still ridiculous. So we're really not that bad off. So the key really is the database. So if you have like I used to have a card system, right? So if you have a CRM, if you have your broker provides a CRM, which is what's called a customer relationship management system. And it doesn't matter if it can't do everything, you need to be able to keep track of people. Now, a lot of times, you might say, well, I need an active buyer, an active seller. And this is why I told you the story about the lady who I've been in relationship with for many years, having conversations, who refers me nonstop. I bet you I'm up to 12 sales from her. And so you need people in your database. And since we can't remember all the details, so if you're doing some transactional business, you have 6 people you deal with: a listing agent, a selling agent, you have a mortgage broker, appraiser, home inspector, title. So all those people are kind of like doing things at their pace, and it reflects on your emotional experience with your client and customer. And so the main thing would be is nurturing that database and building that database of people, names, contacts. It doesn't always have to be a buyer or seller. It has to be people that know, like, and trust you. And sometimes you don't have that yet. You're just building relationships, and it takes time. So I have like 6,500 names in my database over the course of time, and I treat that like gold, a gold mine, not a coal mine, a gold mine. And so like what happens is, if you don't have systems and things in place, you're just running like basically on the rat wheel. Okay. So I've been doing this a long time. I've helped 2,500 families go through the process. I can promise you it's the long view, baby. And so like when you're doing really well, you got to make sure you're living like the millionaire next door. You still reward yourself. You treat your family right. You take your kids on a trip, but you got to live like you're not living high on the hog. You live a nice, like I do, nice lifestyle. I finally got totally out of debt. I had 5 mortgages, 5 colleges, 5 braces, healthcare. It was a miserable experience for a period of time, because like you can't control the interest rates. You can't control the feel good index. You can't control. All you can do, instead of seeing these headlines that terrify, you need to be the clarifier. You need to explain to them, this is what you're seeing, but statistically, we're still in a seller's market. I mean, there's just so much. I don't even know if I can get into it all right now, but I'm just saying it's unbelievable. I could write a book on it. Matter of fact, we're going to give you just a little chapter 1.
So taking off of what you just said, what are you, and you say this is a little shift, and all 3 of us on here today have been around since before the housing crash in 08. So we were all through that. But what are you telling consumers now, people that are calling you to sell their house, coming off a spring market where everything was selling for, a lot of money? Are you saying anything different to your people now when they call you?
Yeah. So it's like everything. Whenever the market shifts, the realtors, not all of them, there's always the 10% or 5% that are dialed in. But, the problem is that most consumers, unless they're in corporate or military, do 3 transactions, maybe 4 in their whole life. Think about it. So that's all they have besides the cleaning lady or their friend at work or a buddy down the street, the expert will say. So whenever you're, like my friend told me, on Zillow, it's worth $1 million, so like, what do you think? And it's like, well, I don't like your number. So the problem is that, they're going to ask like, what's your fee? They don't really understand how to deal with it. So you, as the knowledge broker, remember, the headlines bleed. That's why they lead, right? They terrify, they don't clarify. So what you have to do as a local expert is remember, real estate's local. So it only matters in your backyard. So you have to articulate that. So as an example, Right now, they're saying the sky is falling. I feel there's another bubble. 75% of the consumers believe we're going to have another bubble in real estate and it's going to bust. And 44% of the agents feel the same way. So if that's what you think, how in the hell are you going to explain it to the customer when you're in that spiral going down quick, right?
So true, so true.
Yeah, so what happens is you got to know the numbers. So what are the numbers? So like if I look at the last 2 years of business, I'm depressed, my numbers are off. Guess what? But when I look at 17, 18, and 19, I'm right on track with my numbers. So if you know your numbers and you know where you stand and you can articulate that really the last 2 years, it was a 20% appreciation. Is that normal? You've been around long enough. What do you think is a normal appreciation for real estate?
Well, in our area, it's flat to 2 or 3%
tops, right?
Yeah, right.
Like between 2 and 4.5%. So if you go back 16, 17, 18, 19, it was like 4.5 to 5%. So that's kind of the norm. And then 20 and 21, it jumped up to 20% because everybody's crazy. You know, they're paying all this crazy money. The rates were low. I don't care. I'm not losing again. I'm paying 30 grand. I don't care. It's like, you know, 20 bucks a month, 50 bucks a month, 100 bucks a month. I don't care. And so they're forcing it. And now the Fed raises the rate to almost 8%, which is not doing the job the way they want. Now, it took a lot of the millennials out of the market. And guess what it did to the rental market? It created a shortage and a 25% increase.
Yeah.
So the whole thing is out of sync. And so part of it is as an expert in your backyard, you got to look at your standard MLS. So I'll give you an example where I live. I live in Stark County, Ohio. So what do you think is the national average of a good balance between buyers and sellers in the market? The neutral zone, like when you have a good mix of buyers, supply and buyer demand. That would be between 5 and 7 months of inventory. What's our national inventory right now? You need to know that. So it's 3.6. So you got 3.6 months of inventory. Okay, that's great. What does that mean? Well, that means it's still in the buyer's market. No, it's sellers. Because remember, I said 5 to 7 months of inventory is a nice balance between buyers and sellers. I have a nice graph that I could show you about that. But what happens is, so then you say, okay, what about my backyard? So then you say, what is it in September? Because we don't have the October numbers. It's 2.1. So we have less than 3 months of supply right here in Stark County, right? So that's now in the seller's court. So that means it's still favoring the sellers, even though everybody's scared the market's falling apart. The only way the market will fall apart is if the government implodes. And if it implodes, we're all screwed. But for right now, the supply is low. Demand is still high. They took some of the people out of the market, but guess what? Instead of 10 people for one house, you got 1, maybe 2 people for one house. Still a good market. I mean, the question is that we did lose some of our people. So now if you do what's called an area market survey, so let's say you get into your MLS and you say, let's say, you know, I don't know, pick a neighborhood that you work in, like I'll say school district. So like where I live, you know, we can search by school district. Let's say someone wants to be in this school district and there's like, I don't know, 17, 20,000, 30,000 people. So I can do a search in the school district and just run like the last 6 months of activity, the last 12 months of activity. Now you'll notice if you look at the listing to selling ratio, you're going to see 101%, 103%, 105% of value. Now you're seeing 97%, 96%, 98%, 100%. Now, part of it is how good is the agent at articulating what shift is happening right now. So let's think of seasonality, for example. If we didn't even have a shift, a normal cycle, what normally would happen pre-pandemic, normal business, when it gets close to Thanksgiving and Christmas, how busy is the market usually?
Right.
And then,
Exactly.
and then January 15th through April, May and June, well, the hottest part of the market is April, May, and June, right? Because people think, okay, well, kids are going to be getting out of school. We're going to take our little trip. We're going to buy a house, get in before school. You know, so there's a normal cycle in real estate. But what threw the wrench into everything is March 2020 is when they shut the country down. And heading into April, May, and June was slow times. And then July, August, September, October, November, it would rocket it up until we came back to this new adjustment because the Fed have no tools in their tool bag except for raise the rates as high as inflation to try to calm the waters is what they're trying to do. So I predict that the rates will be 8% before long. They're already 7.5.
So I know you a little bit, Dominic. You are I love listening to you chat, and you are super dialed in with your stats. I have a question for you. It's more of a, I guess, a personal slash how it kind of relates to business. If you have a routine in your work, blended into your personal life, what does that look like?
Okay, so for a long time, that was out of balance and that was a problem. I had 5 children, remember. My wife was a stay-home mom, so I had the pressure of figuring out how to figure it out, right? So I did whatever, because remember I told you, when you are feared, sometimes fear is a pretty good motivator, isn't it? Fear of losing your house, losing your family. And on top of it, over time, I acquired some real estate, kind of finagled some real estate into it. So I actually had 5 mortgages on top of 5 children. So I had a lot of pressure. So that was out of balance and I wasn't happy. It's a bad situation. My wife's talking to me, I got to take this call because I got to keep this deal together, this transaction together, right?
Right.
And so she's like, feels like I'm not really dialed into her. And I'm like, honey, but you don't understand. She goes, oh yeah, what are you, a heart surgeon? Is it couldn't wait till after dinner, can't wait for a minute? So I dealt with that for 15, 20 years out of the 35. Well, so let me tell you what happens now. So as working as hard as I did, dealing with colleges, weddings, whatever I had to do to get it done, including braces and healthcare and all that, and retirement, if there is even any of that. So what I did is I systemized everything. So when you think about a real estate transaction, there's 6 parties involved in it. And if any of those parties screw it up, sometimes your customer is all stressed out and they're disappointed with you, even though it's not really your fault. So I figured out like each scenario, like if it's a VA buyer, FHA buyer, cash buyer, conventional buyer, whatever, construction, whatever, there's certain little nuances that you need to know. So if it's a cash buyer, it's not the same as, you miss a few steps, don't you, in the process? No bank, no appraisal, things like that. And so I put these systems in place. I call it workflows or action plans. And I created video content to go with each one of these so that whenever we get a purchase agreement or we get a listing or something, certain things have to happen. Now, the problem I ran into is if I went over 40 transactions, so let's say I went from 45 transactions for years and years, I was stuck at 45 and I couldn't really get much over 45. And I was just thinking, you know what, I can't really do anymore. You just can't do anymore because it's like, I'm already like cutting home front. I'm getting in trouble with my wife. The kids are mad. Even though I'm at everything, I don't miss anything. I mentally wasn't there because I was beat up and tired. You guys know what I mean if you do business.
Oh, yeah.
And then it went from 45 to 85 transactions in like a year. It just kind of doubled. And I'm like, wow, so I still am doing things the same way I used to do it. And so I was like a firefighter. So I wasn't responding. I was reacting like a firefighter. So you know what I'm talking about. You're in the middle of a report, you're talking on the phone, you're at home relaxing with your family, doing something fun, and all of a sudden panic sets in. And so you got to drop everything and go like a crazy person to do that. So I was able to eliminate 99% of that through putting these systems in place. And then what I found is when you do a lot of transactions, like let's say I do 100 transactions, okay? So what happens perceptually to the customer is you list my home or you're doing whatever and you pass me off on all these other flunkies, right? But thinking about how the profession really works, I mean, technically the doctor doesn't weigh me in. The doctor doesn't take my blood pressure and ask me a few probing questions. The doctor does, HBUTs, right? What is an HBUT? Highest and best use of time. Or they do DP8, dollar producing activities. So when we're going through the process of a real estate transaction, you have to say, okay, what would a perfect transaction be? Because pretty much if it's a conventional loan, it's about the same, right? Inspection, no inspection, repairs, no repairs, appraisal low, appraisal high. You get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So as long as you systemize that, then you can have more predictable results because guess what? When people fall in love with the house, they don't say, I fall financially in love with the house. So they're emotionally tied into the house. And so what I found is randomly a customer would be dissatisfied with me, but happy with my office help because they're communicating with her all the time. So now when my buyer's agents or anybody's working with anybody that I have, I'm the face of the business. So even though it's not personal to you, Mark or Will, it would just say, I'll give you an example. Hey, congratulations. So you're the buyer's agent, right, Mark? So you put something under contract and I got the whole workflow in place, right? So what happens is we activate the workflow for a pending transaction. And what has to happen right away? Earnest money. formal loan application, schedule the inspections, right? And then within 2 weeks, the appraisal. And then there's a period of time where it's quiet, nothing's happening. And so what are they thinking? Wow, what about the utilities? What about the keys? What about this? What about that? So they're panicked. So what do? They call you. And so now you stop everything and you fill in the blanks. Well, with the system in place, they get it at the right amount of time before they really have to call and ask you the question. You send them this like automatic thing that's sent out, right? So it's a written document with a video. I'll give you an example of what I say. Say, hi guys, congratulations, we're under contract, yay. So what's the next steps? Well, the next steps are to make sure you get your purchase agreement. Now, in this case, we just do it through .loop. So we send it, to the lender, for example. So I'd say, so the next step is to go ahead and per the purchase agreement, because I don't know if they're doing inspections or not. So I'll say, per the purchase agreement, whatever inspections that you wanted, if you want them, you want to make sure you get those scheduled within the next 3 days. And then let us know once you do that. So then once we do that, then we send it to the listing agent, selling agent, to everybody that's involved. Automatically, we do this because we know all the parties when we load them in. So if I have a transaction with Will and I'm sorry, Mark, then, I would have your email, your contact, because everything's done by email. Now we can also do it by text, but email is just easier. So I preset the customer. So what we do is like DISC, you're familiar with it?
Yeah, disc.
Right. So let's say I'm a D driver. Do I need all the graphs and all the charts? Just give me the bottom line, right? But if I'm a S personality or C personality, then I kind of make sure that they don't miss anything. So the system is set up to cover them in plenty of time so that they eliminate a lot of the unnecessary calls, the reactive, stressful calls, right? Because I prefer a response. So I preset them in the beginning, then they get these videos and it tells them what next steps are. For example, what happens when you're in a market like we were in and still in, things are moving a little quickly. So you got to move your butt. You can't wait till Thursday to see it. You got to go out right now and see it, right? And let's say you get it under contract. What happens at 2 a.m. when they start thinking about their transaction that happened instantly and maybe paid a little bit more than they wanted to? And their friends, they tell their friends how excited they are. And their friends start saying, oh, what about this? What about that? And then what happens? Buyer's remorse, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So now you're spending all your reactive time talking them off the ledge, and now you're losing other opportunities. So I have it set up into my system that, hey, this may happen to you. So we make them do pluses and minuses before they write the offer. And if they say, oh no, we got them all up here in their head. Well, what happens at 2 a.m. when you have anxiety? Do you think you can remember anything? No, you just want out of the deal. You want out of the transaction. I don't want anything to do with it. So you have to understand and troubleshoot these by presetting them right out of the gate. So we do that every step of the way. And once we figured this out, like I did this like 5 years ago. I mean, we've been working on it for years, but about 5 years ago, we kind of like got the foundation the way we want. And now we just tweak it a little bit. Like the other day, we find that when we are dual agents, we don't have a plan for that. And so there's a different kind of things that happen because we're a dual agent, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we just created our new flow a couple of days ago because we've been kind of, we got to delete this and manually do this. And we don't want to do that. We want it pretty much automatic. And so that system is duplicatable 95% of the time. So that then took all the reactive rat wheel stuff down to this. And guess what? So now the infrastructure is in place. And so the people that are running the system have checklists. They can't screw it up, right? So like, oh, geez, I forgot the earnest money. I'm going to lose my license. The earnest money is kind of important, isn't it? So if there's no earnest money, baby, you better get it figured out. And when you got 6 or 10 or 12 transactions pending, it might slip up. Your wife has a trauma, the kid falls and gets stitches. I mean, you get distracted from life. So you need your systematic system controlled. And the other thing is I have 2 phones. I have a work phone and a day off phone, right? So this one stays at the office 9 to 5. So the phone gets answered. And then she knows my schedule. She can schedule. She knows I like to be off Wednesdays and the weekend. So Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, you book me. So I want to take 3 days off a week now. So that's how I transition by these systems and a secondary phone. And, I can break it down a little bit more, but that's just the essence of it.
That's awesome.
There's a lot of
let me
gold
tell
there,
you,
man.
like that was the thing, Will. What did I tell you before? So, you hit these unbelievable numbers. You're like, work, hard, more, go, save, spend. And like when you make a lot of money and you spend a lot of money, and then you start all over again. Do you know how painful that is, right? So if you're a
Every
newer
realtor
agent,
goes through.
Absolutely
you
miserable.
don't know that until you do it for a period of time. And just because you had 2 killer years, think if you're a new agent in 20 or 21, and then you just had this unbelievable order taking year, and like all the lenders, all the title people, the newer people are like freaked out. They're like, oh my God, the sky's falling. And I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? This is like awesome. I'm loving it.
Yeah.
Not to be rude, but I'm just saying, honestly, guys, the market is good. And what you do is you go back to the basics, communicate with people. Don't just text me. Like, how about this one? For a quicker response, text me. No. Pick up the phone, talk to me. And then after that, I'll text you. And the problem is like, well, I texted them like 3 times. They never responded.
You're so right, man. So basically what we're getting from this.
Answer the phone, man. I'm just saying.
What we're getting from this, and we all know this because we've been in the business a long time, is you just have to keep looking in the MLS. The houses are selling. It's not like the minute you start thinking things are bad, all you got to do is look in the MLS. Houses are selling every day.
I mean, like, okay, so if you do an area market survey, okay, and this is what I want to say. This is one thing I do kind of regularly. So you go into the MLS, right? You pick a district that you search or you're looking for. Let's say you have a client that wants to be in X school district. Then what you do is you say, okay, let's say it's let's say 300 to 600,000. You want to know what that market's doing, or you want to see 500 to 600, or like you want to see the hottest market's 250 to 350, right? So if you look at all the activity, all the sales, all the pendings, the list to sell ratios, you can see where the pocket is. So like if you're trying to say, well, you know what, I want to be an elephant killer. I'm going to get those $600,000 houses so I can make a good commission. And here you're on the market 180 days, it's not selling. But let's say you're in the 250, 350 range, like a day, multiple offers, even now, a day, multiple offers, full price, bam, bam. So, if you want to prospect, then that would be, the bread and butter, baby. So you go for the bread and butter, so I'm not ashamed to say I'm in a pocket. Some people say, well, you need to be in a niche. Well, how I survived all of these years is I did whatever it took to make sure I have shoes for my kids. And so that would be a smaller house, a bigger house, even a trailer I sold. I mean, whatever it takes, you do what you have to do and you build that reputation. Because how many times do people say to you, oh, Mark and Will, like, why didn't you call me? Oh, you're so busy, and you deal with those $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 houses. Mine's just a $200,000 house. Like, I don't want to, you guys are so busy. And like, really? I would kill for that all day long.
I think we all would.
Yeah. So remember, perception is their reality, thanks to social media and the headlines and the fake news and all that stuff that happens. Honestly, you need to kind of dial in a hair deeper. If I look at the headlines and I don't go any deeper, then I'm scared. I can tell you right now, I would be scared.
You've provided a lot of insight here, Dominic. I knew you would. Bottom line is, for everybody listening to this, you just have to keep doing what you're doing, and you can't take things for granted, and you got to get your arms around your relationships.
And build that database, and make sure you got your email, and make sure you have your phone, and make sure you know how they like to communicate. I mean, it's possible. Texting's good most of the time. There's more people that text than use the computer probably. And we know 55% or more use a mobile device and they're on the go. So you just have to know, after you build some trust and rapport, because people work with who they know, like, and trust. And they don't get to know you until they see your authenticity. Because, like if someone says, hey, Dom, I would love to be, like you and do as well as you do, but you think they know the story? They have perception, right. But then once they get to know me, Will, you and I spent some time together. You had your perception, and then we got to meet. Mark, same with you. And then you could say, wow, he's a little different than I thought, or he's a jerk, or whatever you think, right?
Well, I will say this. I have been licensed for 15 years. And for anybody that's listening, that's 2 years or less. Well, this entire 30, 45 minutes that we have right now has been absolute gold. And I would save this as a podcast, and I would come back and listen to it every single week. And specifically, I love I think you quoted about half of the voicemails that I hear, which is for a faster response, text me, please pick up the phone. And I am probably one of those agents that people complain about, that they send me a text that I don't get back to them quick enough, because I don't want to text all day long. I would like to talk to you and have an actual conversation. And that is the same thing that you should do when you follow up with everybody that's in a CRM as well. So that's
I'll say, do we have a minute to say, can I say another thing or two? Do we have time, Will?
Yeah.
So here's the other thing. So the voicemail. So let's say you can call, right? Leave a voicemail. I can answer, or my office manager will answer, so that we try to answer the phone. Sometimes we can't answer the phone, right? So that's why I have a secondary phone, because it would buzz and interrupt me and distract me, so that's why I don't have those watch phones. I don't have that. So if the voicemail comes in, right, it comes in as an email. So I can see the email, it spits out the words, right? So I can check that out and I don't miss it, but my voicemail is not full. You listen to this long, garbled message, and then they say, your mailbox is full. And it aggravates you even more. So I do what's called a double tap technique. The double tap means you call, get their voicemail, hang up, call right back again, hang up, call right back again. So they're thinking, ooh, this might be important, I better answer. And you'll get the answer. But they talk to you like for 2 seconds, they text you, and you want to try to call them because you can't text the whole sentence or a paragraph. You want to talk to them, and then they don't answer. It's like, really? Like, what are you like inside the bathroom, shower, or what? What's happening here? So it just blows me away. So like, hey, dude, if you're going to be in the work mode, just answer the phone and cut it short. Well, I don't really like to talk to anybody. They're going to have to text me. And for a quicker response, that's how I do respond. I'm going to train you. So what I do is I'll text if it's more important. Just say, hey, check your voicemail. Like, check your voicemail, because I can explain more details on the voicemail, so there's something pending important, right? And what I try to do is condition all my customers that once we get in contract or we're working with you, let's communicate by email. And the reason why is because if I have the phone, I got to screenshot and send it to my office, where if it's email, they see my emails and they can interact and take care of 90% of the requests, which I don't even have to deal with, right?
There you go. Yeah.
So it's kind of like preset. When I say preset, based on what end of the business you're doing, you have to preset your customers. And so, you just explained it all to them and they don't remember a damn word you said. So that's why you kind of like, have to do these things like that in writing and video and stuff like that.
It's beautiful,
so that's basically all I have for you. And if anybody wants to know more, you want to talk sometime, you can come to me at 330-418-1535, text or call, and I will answer, right? And or send me an email at dominic@dominicfonte.com. Or if you want to go check me out, Google Dominic Fonte or go to dominicfonte.com.
Thanks, man. This has been an absolute pleasure. You're a wealth of knowledge, and thanks for being on the show with us today.
My pleasure, guys. Be safe and hope to see you sometime for a cup of coffee.
Thanks everyone for listening, and keep checking back. We're going to continue interviewing amazing agents like Dominic Fonte in Stark County, Ohio. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Building Stronger Agents podcast. If you like this episode, please give us a 5-star review and share our podcast with your friends.